City. Located 5 miles southeast of Marion, it lies along the east side of the Centennial River, named the Shining Water by the Indian tribe who once occupied the territory. Before Gas City, there was the hamlet of Harrisburg, founded on the Panhandle Railroad on March 25th of 1867 by John S. Harris. He was a trapper and grocery store owner. The town, surrounded by farms and forests, became a principal shipper of walnut logs and lumber. The railroad was planned to go further east, but several prominent farmers demanded that it come this way so they could ship by rail. Earlier, the stop was known as Jones Station or East Jonesboro because of the older town of Jonesboro on the west bank of the Mississinawa. Thus, they were called Twin Cities. This map was platted in 1877 when Harrisburg was 10 years old. But a sleeping giant lay deep beneath the quiet village. It was unleashed when the first gas well was drilled near the cemetery in 1887. On a site now occupied by the former Central Wisconsin Motor Transport Company. After the discovery, several Kokomo businessmen and speculators leased nearly all the land in this territory for its wealth of natural gas. When they found they had more leases than they could use for their purposes, they interested Pennsylvania railroad officials in buying up some of them and starting an industrial town. To avoid the possibility of confusion between Harrisburg, Indiana and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, railroad officials were instrumental in changing the name to Gas City, which was understandably fitting at the time. The land on both sides of the railroad was reserved for future factories. On March 21st of 1892, Gas City Land Company filed articles of incorporation, and 5 days later Harrisburg was merged into Gas City with a population of 150. A land office was built at 4th and Main Streets, shown in the lower left. By year's end, 1,640 lots had been sold at prices from $200 to well over $1,000. Promoters visioned the city of 25,000 people and laid out plats and sold lots sufficient to accommodate that number. And for that reason, Gas City is distributed over a larger area than necessary, as shown in this aerial view of the 1930s. Approved manufacturers were to be provided free lands for planted storage, also free railroad switch connections, free natural gas for fuel and lighting, free water supply from the river, and free leases on natural gas territory, securing an inexhaustible supply of gas. On March 29th, just 8 days after incorporation of the land company, the Marion or Marietta Glass Factory chose a location just west of the railroad near North F Street. They manufactured embossed, illuminated, and cathedral glass. On May 11th of 1892, the first addition to Gas City was recorded. Within 3 weeks, 534 lots had been sold. Visitors who bought lots had their railroad fares deducted from the price. Within 3 months, 8 factories had located here. The next was American Window Glass on a site near where Owens, Illinois glass was later built. They manufactured double-strength window glass. Immediately following was the erection of the Thompson & Company green glass bottle plant. At the same time, the Mills and Leach Lumber and Planing Mill was erected near the same locality. June 9th, the Moore Company of Wales chose Gas City as the site of an immense tin plate, steel, and foundry works covering 52 acres and employing 2,000 workers using material from Welsh mines. It was to have been the biggest in the world. In the same month, Marion Flint Glass contracted to erect the Gas City Bottle Company for manufacturing a high grade of druggist bottles, prescription ware, and flasks from a 14-pot furnace. It was also located near Thompson Glass and went into full operation on October 1st. The next large establishment to choose Gas City for a permanent location was the U.S. Glass Company from Pittsburgh, to be erected north of the railroad station at B Street. It was surmised to become the biggest glass factory in the United States, with plans to hire 600 men and boys. Immediately following, the Diamond Glass was erected south of Thompson Glass. Shown here is a glass blower with a partly finished cylinder. These were then split and flattened to make window panes. Then there was the Sheldon Bottle Factory located between the railroad and South 8th Street, along with the Gas City Manufacturing Company and planing mill, a machine shop and box factory, the pottery, which burned in 1901, a heading factory that made barrels and hoops, an axe factory, and a large brickyard. Chicago Edge and Tool Works was across the railroad and west of Thompson Glass. The plant spread as far east as 6th Street. In the fall, the Gas City Strawboard Works was erected, capable of manufacturing 200 tons of strawboard a day with 200 workers. The Lindley Box and Paper Company followed shortly. These factories were located between the river and the railroad west of the present high school. This photo, taken in the 40s, shows all that remained at the time of a retaining wall from the old strawboard. The Lindley Box and Paper Factory later became the Schulte's Canning Factory. It was destroyed by fire in the late 40s. The Grant Iron and Steel Company secured ground for a bar steel and bar iron plant capable of employing 225 workmen. What in May was a broad expanse of wheatland had in August been transformed into a busy scene of building to meet the oncoming thousands who were to make Gas City their home and workshop. Meandering rail fences disappeared, and in every direction, smoothly graded streets and avenues bisected the fields of wheat once enclosed by them. In May of 1892, the land company awarded a $40,000 contract for the construction of a brick hotel known as the Centennial Hotel, and later to be named the Avalon. The next year, an annex was added to the east side of the original hotel. It was used for a time as a sanitarium. One of the first moves after the land was obtained was to establish a post office. It was located east of the alley where Webb's furniture stands and was just big enough for 2 people. Burr Harris, the first postmaster, met 4 trains a day at the depot. Many of the best vaudeville shows on the road were shown in Levitt's Opera House at 3rd and Main, the first permanent building on Main Street. The 3rd floor was a hall for public meetings and entertainment. It was equipped to seat 500. Another of the first brick buildings on Main Street was the First National Bank, shown in this architect's drawing. However, when the structure was completed, the plan had been reversed. While the factories were going up, 23 brick storerooms were under construction on Main Street. This block of stores still stands at 3rd and Main, anchored by Owens Hardware. Another block of businesses was located just west, across from where City Hall now stands. Rothinghouse Brothers Drugstore was located on the left. A good, substantial frame cottage with 4 rooms, kitchen, summer kitchen, porch, fence, and outhouse could be obtained for $475. A 2-story frame was about $575. People lived in tents and shanties all over town until homes could be built. Planning for the expected heavy traffic, Main Street was built 80 feet wide and paved with vitrified brick. The streetcar line ran right down the center. This was the view of North 3rd Street from Main. An early project was planting trees along the streets, shown here on South 1st Street. Sidewalks were made of boards. This early view of Main Street looks east from 2nd Street. A little farther east, you can see O. Gordon's Furniture Store on the right. While there was much activity in the city, it wasn't all work and no play. Dr. Conley had a racetrack by the river that attracted large crowds. Another favorite pastime of many, especially the Belgians, was hunting pearls in the river. The Mississippi River, one of the few in the United States that flows north, was very popular for boating and fishing. The steam launch Helen Boyd plied the river between 2 dams for 10 cents a ride. Named for the daughter of L.C. Boyd, a financier in the land company. It was operated by Gene Marshall, who was later proprietor of a tavern. The vessel was abandoned after it sank for a second time during high waters. There has been mention of a rock dam, 2 brush dams, and a timber dam in the Gas City area. For the latter, it was said 28,000 feet of hewed timber was used. There was also a shady Lover's Lane road that followed the river from 10th Street Bridge to the old covered bridge. A riverside camp was shown in this 1910 painting by Charlie Garthwaite. The river was also a place for many baptisms during sunny Sunday afternoons. This area, located in North F and 1st Streets, was the site of Garthwaite's Grove, a shaded picnic area popular with the community in the early part of the century. Platform dances were also held here occasionally. Early settlers had to cross the Mississippi at a ford near Jonesboro, so bridges became very important to the communities. A 2-track covered bridge was built during the Civil War at a cost of $3,500, where Pearl Street ends at Water Street in Jonesboro. It also accommodated the streetcar line. A second crossing was made possible when an iron bridge was constructed at 10th Street, shown here from the railroad trestle. A gas field is seen in the background. The wooden covered bridge burned in 1901. An iron bridge was completed the same year north of the burned-out structure at the intersection of Main and Water Streets. The iron bridge served over half a century by having the wood paving block floor replaced with concrete, but when State Road 22 was routed through the city, the increasing traffic became too much. In early 1960, test drilling was begun north of the iron span for a new bridge. Construction on a new concrete 4-lane span began in 1965. By year's end, the new Bob Ray Bridge was completed, connecting Gas City to the Jonesboro bypass and at the same time directing US 35 traffic through the city. The death knell for the old bridge came in January of 1966 when the girders were dismantled. All that remained was a pile of jumbled steel lying in the riverbed. For local public transportation, the interurban streetcar lines started almost simultaneously with the city. The early ones ran between Gas City and Jonesboro every hour across the covered bridge until it burned in 1901. A wooden trestle was built on the burned-out site for streetcars. It was used for 3 years before being washed out in a flood. After the bridge burned, a car called the Dinky started at South H and 1st Streets. It ran east on South H to 4th, north on 4th to Main, and west to the junction where passengers were transferred from Marion and other parts. Later, the South H and 4th Street runs were eliminated, terminating at Main and 4th. An iron streetcar bridge was completed July 23rd of 1904 to replace the wooden trestle. And about this time, Matter Park in Marion came into existence, and the Soldiers' Home is only a few years old. Each offered low-priced entertainment and could be reached by the streetcar for a 5-cent fare. The Gas City car is shown here on the Courthouse Square in Marion. This iron bridge continued in use until the interurbans were abandoned in the 1930s. After the bridge was dismantled, the pier served for several years more as a flood gauge before being torn out when the new concrete bridge was built. John L. Thompson, founder of the Thompson Bottle Company, began construction on this stately mansion at 4th and Main in 1892, with completion coming 10 years later. The Gas City Journal was born in 1892 at the same time as the new city in the IOOF building across from present-day Mike Anderson Chevrolet. Publishers were C.E. Van Valer and Walter Leach. Type for the weekly newspaper was set on this early model linotype machine, which cast a full line of type onto a single slug from molten lead. Newspaper pages were made up on these imposing tables in the composing room, shown in this 1907 view. In about 1910, this popular card room was built at 1st and Main Street on the site of a blacksmith shop. Bert Wingate later replaced the card room with this brick building to be used for a bowling alley. It was also reported to have been a blind tiger during Prohibition. The Gas City Journal then relocated here. Today, it is the home of the Twin City Auction. Walter Leach was editor, linotype operator, makeup man, printer, binder, you name it. His editorials were often composed directly on the linotype, bypassing the typewriter. In this 1942 view of the composing room, from left to right were Walter Leach, John Russell, Dick Van Valer, C.E. Van Valer, and Myra Williams. The printer's devil was Norman Barry, who was hired mainly to keep him out from underfoot. Each week, the Gas City and Jonesboro Journal was printed on this C.B. Cottrell cylinder press, which had been obtained from a book publishing company. The shop also was a complete job printing plant, supplying every kind of printing needs. Mr. Van Valer's pride and joy was an antique George Washington hand press, which sat for years in the lobby of the Journal office. After his death, the press was sold to Nick Sarnicki, a local machinist for the iron plates. The high school, housing 12 grades, was completed in October of 1884 by John H. Waldron on South 4th Street between A and B Streets. Construction cost was $38,920 with an additional $9,483 for the heating plant. In 1890, enumeration showed 1,216 persons of school age within the city. As physical education came to be recognized as an important phase of school life, the schools purchased the old livery barn at 3rd and North A Streets and rebuilt it into Riley Hall. It was later acquired for use as the Onized Clubhouse. Gas City operated under town form of government the first 3 years and then incorporated as a 5th-class city on April 9th of 1895. At that time, Gas City had a mixed population of 4,500, since many of the tinplate workers were Welsh and the window glass workers were largely Belgians. The Frazee Sawmill was located northeast of town, and the locality bounded by 8th, 10th, North F, and North H Streets was often referred to as Frazeeville and Slabtown. At the turn of the century, a brickyard was located on this half-block bounded by 1st, West North A, and Short Streets. The kiln was fired by natural gas. Bricks made here were used to build the West Ward School and were delivered for $5.25 per thousand. Short Street was conceived to facilitate delivery to the railroad at B Street. The first local school was built in 1874 when the community was still known as Harrisburg. It was a 3-room brick structure on property now occupied by the West Ward Building. Between 1900 and 1902, John H. Waldron, the contractor responsible for the East Building, also built the West School at West North A and Grant Streets. Its cost was $12,000, including the heating plant. Built in the Richardsonian Romanesque style, the structure reflected the area's prosperity during the gas boom. An identical twin of this school was built in LaPel, Indiana, but has since been torn down. This school served area elementary students for 80 years before it was retired and converted into a community center. And we take a last nostalgic look at one of the classrooms. Students today never saw a blackboard made from heavy panels of slate. Mrs. George Webb's home at West North A and Short Streets was originally that of John Waldron, builder of both the East and West schools. Gas City volunteer firemen of about 1901 posed in front of the old frame fire department, which was located on the same lot as the present buildings. This is how the fire and rescue facilities appear today. Another addition is planned for this year. Downtown Gas City looked like this in 1904. Note the gasoline pumps at curbside in front of the hardware store. In 1906, heavy brine salt water began to show up instead of gas, and the bubble was about to burst. As the pressure lowered one by one, the factories dropped out until just 2. Thompson and U.S. Glass remained. The U.S. finally succumbed during the Depression of the early 30s. Gas from the area had been piped to Chicago, and there were supposed to be 400 wells on that line at one time. It is believed that if the gas had been kept here, Gas City would have had its gas for many years to come. This advertisement for the Diamond Glass Company appeared in 1907 on a postal card. The next year, the Diamond Window Glass factory was totally destroyed by fire. This supermarket of about the year 1910 is at 125 West Main. It was owned by Frank Marshall and later by Herschel and Carrie Mock. It is now occupied by the Gas City Packaged Liquor Store. H.B. Mock came to Gas City as a glassblower, but went into the grocery business when bottle machines were installed by Owens, Illinois. Mrs. Carrie Mock was at one time a school board member. She worked in the store every day beside her husband. The kids looked forward to bill paying day every 2 weeks at Mock's when they were rewarded with a sack of penny candies and chocolate drops. While on the subject of groceries, this antique milk jug with its original cap still intact is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Elmer Steiner. The Soames brothers were active in dairy and grocery operations in Gas City for many years. This is a view of a hardware store from about the same time period as Marshall's Grocery. The flood of March 26, 1913 bore out the wisdom of building the city above the floodplain. This view is to the southwest towards Jonesboro. Another view of the flood, this time toward the U.S. Glass Factory. Looking west from the north side of the bridge, we see a two-story frame building, since replaced by Woods Realty. The flood deposited much debris on the streetcar bridge, blocking traffic. The Gas City Mill Township Library was completed in 1914 with a $12,500 grant from the Carnegie Foundation. The first library was in a storeroom at the site of Mike Anderson Chevrolet. At one time, the entire building was covered with ivy. This made a picturesque view, but was very hard on the masonry. In 1917, a van, or bookmobile as it was called, was purchased. It traveled the township every 2 weeks, reaching patrons who had difficulty coming to the library. Dolores Griffith is seen here with the van in 1963. The library is currently planning further expansion of the facilities with a new addition to be built on the west side, incorporating features to aid the handicapped. A 1916 picture postcard called this Bungalow Row. It is in the 300 block of East Main. This is how the same area appears today. A train wreck occurred on the Pennsylvania line near Main Street on July 6th of 1916. In this photo, the hotel and Panhandle restaurant can be clearly seen. The workhorse of the wrecking crews, a steam-powered crane, sets a boxcar back on the tracks. The Custer Lumber Company appears in the background of this view. Formerly a grist mill, Custer Lumber Company later became the Gas City Lumber Company, operated by Orville Taylor and consequently his sons Richard and Joe. Refurbished in 1976 as a paint store and later a hardware store, the building was finally torn down in 1991. The next forward movement in the Gas City School program came in 1924 when an assembly hall and gymnasium were added to the old high school. Improvements included a new heating plant, removing the tower from the old building and adding ground for a playground. The bell in the old building rang for many years, and there were always students awaiting a turn to pull the rope. The new gym became the home of the Gas City Tigers basketball team for many years. Numerous student activities were held here over the years. Many plays, shows, and convocations were presented on the stage for the students and the community. For several years, the Oney's Club presented old-fashioned minstrel shows. One of the interlocutors was Don Millspaw. There was always a full complement of end men with their corny jokes. Two of the entertainers who are still around are Carl McCann and Roy Bigger. Over the years, more elementary units were added in the area where the athletic track and field was once located. A new city hall was built in 1930 on Main Street, replacing a frame building at South 3rd and A Streets. The council chamber was located in the basement, but will be moved to Hunts Hall to make it more accessible for the handicapped to attend. While the first high school was being built, school was held in the former Indiana Dry Goods building at 1st and Main, shown here at the right. The top floor was destroyed by fire in about 1933. The Golden Eagle, a prominent clothing store in the 30s, is shown on the right. This building later was the site of Kroger, Spiker's Furniture, Swiss Chalet Grocery, and presently the Journal Reporter. The building in the lower left was one time a skating rink and motion picture theater. Later, it became the Johnson Ford Agency and presently houses Autotech Auto Parts Store. The facade featured this lion's head, which was lost during remodeling. The Mallory Theater was once located in the K&P building at 2nd and Main Streets. The Linco gas station was on the opposite corner to the east, and next to that was Mamie Frederick's restaurant. Jess Hans also operated a men's clothing store at this location. Shown at the right was Webb's Tavern. Sandwiched between the two was Millspall's used car lot. The office was housed in one of the last streetcars. You are now looking east at the 100 block of East Main Street. On the south side of West Main and First was the bowling alley, Malay's feed store and grocery on the extreme right. This entire business section was demolished recently following a disastrous fire in the bowling alley turned restaurant. The last streetcar ran to Gas City in June of 1937. Buses then took over the transportation to Jonesboro and Marion. Bauslog was the first operator of the line, running every hour on the half hour. The franchise was later changed to the Twin City coach lines. Present to turn the first shovelful of dirt for the new post office, completed in 1938, were Walter Leach, the Journal editor, hardware owner Luke Wagoner, who supplied the shovel, Chief of Police William Hunter, Mayor L.H. Conley, Reverend Milo Bousman, the Journal publisher C.E. Van Baylor, and Postmaster Fay Crandall. The original post office building stood on the alley where Webb's Furniture is now. Over the years, it was moved to the Mississinawa Hotel, the location now occupied by Star Cafe and the old Garthwaite building. It finally got a permanent home when the new Federal building was realized at the corner of East North A and 2nd Streets. A special first day cover was offered for the event on April 30th of 1938. The mural depicting Gas City's early days hangs above the postmaster's door. It was the work of a Works Progress Administration, or WPA, artist. Although appearing very dated today, 3 icons in stone appear on the face of the post office, commemorating the very latest in high-speed mail transportation of the day: airplanes, ships, and trains. Boulevard lighting was installed on Main Street in 1940, enhancing the business area at night. The Oni's Club was originally located here at East North A and 4th Streets. After a serious fire, it was relocated in the remodeled Riley Hall. The 40s also brought an end to plowing the city sidewalks in winter with a horse-drawn snowplow. Gas City Telephone Service started as an independent company located above Rothinghouse Brothers Drugstore. It was later bought out by Bell Telephone and located here, where Mike Anderson Chevrolet used car lot is situated. That building was replaced in the 40s when automatic dial service was installed. Gas City's 50th anniversary jubilee was held in September of 1942. A high aerial act was performed right in front of City Hall. Other events included a beard growing contest, a kangaroo court, and a pony show, to name a few. Among the many floats in the parade was this one, sponsored by the Owens, Illinois Glass Company. Many of the town's citizens donned period costumes for the event. For many years, Main Street was decorated like this at Christmas, with a canopy of lights zigzagged between boulevard light poles. But this lighting actually started during the Jubilee, when red, white, and blue bulbs were used to simulate a huge patriotic bunting above the street. A motion picture theater and the Opera House seem to have been synonymous. A Nickelodeon was first located here after the advent of the silent films. This early view of the arcade theater illustrates the square canopy that originally sheltered the entrance and box office. The theater was purchased by Dave Simpkins, who had worked in the glass bottle business until his arms and hands became useless. In 1941, the arcade was remodeled and a new marquee installed. New seats, a new screen, and air conditioning were added. Operating the latest in projection equipment was Harry Lowe. After the arcade went out of business in 1973, 2 gentlemen tried to revive it as the Biograph, but the support was not there and it failed also. Today, the tradition continues with the Theater Pizza and Ice Cream Parlor occupying the old storefront. Pennsylvania Station in Gas City was a thriving place during the boom days, handling many trains a day. Stagecoaches transported passengers from the depot to the several hotels. Gas City travelers are aware the name of their hometown, Gas City, usually brings an amused smile, if not outright laughter. But there was a day when the name had glamour, and the cry of the conductors in the big railroad stations of the East could be heard.
All aboard for Gas City and Chicago!
The Pennsylvania Railroad was unique for its double-track system, allowing two-way traffic. The Gas City station was equipped with a tunnel under the track so passengers could reach the northbound platform if a southbound train blocked the way. The freight station was built in 1903. The elevator can be seen to the right. The war's end also brought an end to the powerful steamers that were always such a delight to watch. It also brought an end to the old depot, which fell into disuse and then demolition. The once bustling transportation center is no more and appears like this today. A little bit of 8mm footage was taken in the 50s, and it explains in part the demise of the once great railroad giant. In hopes of mechanizing track maintenance with fewer men, the railroad honchos experimented at Gas City with a contraption to level the roadbed without removing tracks or ties. It was a disaster. In the early 40s, a new water storage tower was constructed behind Riley Hall. When finished, it offered great views of the city, this one to the northeast, taken around 1952. A different perspective comes to the Avalon Hotel when viewed from this height. This view shows the business section in the 200 block looking southwest. A bit farther to the southwest, the Owens, Illinois comes into view. During the first 5 years of operation, the country was in recession, but the Thompson Bottle Works survived. Starting with a 6-ring tank making green glass bottles, the plant expanded to an 8-ring tank, then a 12-ring tank, and an 8-ring amber tank. Then came the demand for flintware, and a 16-ring flint tank was constructed. A total of 36 shops working day and night made the flint the largest hand-blown industry east of the Mississippi. Shown here are some of the bottle blowers' tools. Thompson Glass employees take time out from their hot jobs to have their picture taken in about 1907. In keeping with the long-established custom, all the glass factories closed during the torrid months of July and August. In 1913, Thompson Bottle Company merged with Illinois Glass Company of Alton, Illinois. The first Owens automatic bottle machines were installed, replacing the skilled bottle blowers. A new office building was constructed at this time. In the same year, 2 disastrous fires occurred. In June, a $10,000 fire destroyed the producer house. A $100,000 fire the following month also destroyed 2 warehouses filled with bottles. The first women were hired for production work in 1917 during the First World War. A new boiler plant was completed in 1926. And in 1929, the Illinois Glass Company, with 8 plants, merged with the Owens Bottle Company, with 11 plants, to form the largest glass company in the country. Gas City Plant Number 12 was operating 11 Owens bottle machines at the time. A separate corrugated department building was erected in 1936, highlighting a 3-day carnival to celebrate the opening. Aerial rides were given in a cage suspended by the huge overhead crane. By the year 1941, the plant had expanded to the size shown here. Gas City's Owens, Illinois plant ceased operation on December 18th of 1982. Employment at the time of closing was 270. It was also the final day for the AQ bottle machines, no longer in use anywhere in the world. By September of 1986, the bulk of the plant was being reduced to rubble. Only the corrugated building and the warehouses would remain. One of the few remnants of the place that had given employment to hundreds was the whistle that sounded shift changes for so many years. It was presented to the Gas City Historical Society. E. Morwood & Company was one of the largest tinplate mills in the United States. It began operation in June of 1893. A news story at the time said a sheet of steel was thrust into a furnace containing about 16 tons of molten metal covered with palm oil, and after passing between the half-dozen pairs of rolls embedded therein, it came out shining like burnished silver. The plant consisted of 20 acres of fireproof buildings near South J Street, west of the railroad. When the gas ran out, the plant moved away in 1909, leaving no signs of its presence. This is how the United States Glass Company was pictured in 1909. Primary production was table glassware. Commonly referred to as the U.S., the factory succumbed during the Depression of the early 30s. In 1937, it was purchased by the Slick Glass Corporation and returned to production. In 1951, Knox Glass Bottle Company purchased the assets of the bankrupt Slick Glass Corporation. Next in succession of owners was Midwest Glass. This photo of one of the bottle machines was taken in 1952. This view of the inspection and packing department was made the same year. Glass Container Corporation took over the plant from 1967 to 1983, followed by Container General Corporation in 1983 and 1984 when it was closed permanently. This sign, which was still on display after the factory ceased operation, may have been a misnomer since the original plant produced tableware. From the very outset, churches have held an important place for people of the city. The Baptists organized in 1887 and met in a building on West Main Street. Their next house of worship was built on North B Street, but after a few years it was destroyed by fire. After meeting for a time on the third floor of the bank building, another church was built on North B Street. In 1912, the church on South A Street was purchased from the Presbyterians. The Methodist Church joined with the Baptists in constructing that first building in 1888 on West Main Street, east of the old lumber yard. After considerable growth, the churches felt need of separate places of worship, and the Methodists bought the interest of the Baptists. This tiny store building west of the railroad where the laundromat now stands originally was the home of Reverend C.T. Nichols, the first minister of the Methodist Church. The present church was built between 1894 and 1898. During the construction, the membership worshipped in the Masonic Lodge Hall on the third floor of the bank building. An annex was added in 1916. The pipe organ was also installed at this time. The property on South A Street opposite the church was purchased as a parsonage in 1903. Billed at a cost of a little over $8,000, the amount was subscribed in one day of solicitations. The church appears like this today, without a steeple. During 1893, St. Paul's Episcopal Church held services in the Opera House on East Main Street. The present church was originally built on the southeast corner of West South H and Rogers Avenue in 1894. In 1911, the building was moved to South A and 2nd for a more central location. Organized April 1, 1893, in the old school where West Ward now stands, First Christian Church meetings were held in different buildings until 1920. At that time, the building at 2nd and South B Streets was secured and then remodeled. This view of the sanctuary was photographed in 1950. On May 15th of 1966, the congregation moved into a new edifice at 401 East North D Street. This is the view of the sanctuary today. The first Catholic church was formed in 1893. A 40 by 100-foot frame building was built at 311 East North A Street. It was named St. Genevieve because there were so many persons of foreign birth in the city. But it was a different story a few years later. When the cornerstone of the second church building was laid in 1908, the name had been changed to the Holy Family Catholic Church. It was estimated 10,000 people witnessed the event. Progress on construction is shown here. As it appeared in the fall of 1908, the new building was erected at a cost of $32,000. The church has been well maintained over the years and continues to be a point of interest in the city. In the 40s, a grotto and sunken garden was located on the west side of the rectory. It has since been replaced with a parish hall. The Church of God was organized in 1919 on South 3rd Street. A new building was erected and dedicated at North C and 1st in 1934. That church was destroyed by fire and was later rebuilt. It is now the home of Community Bible Methodist Church. The Wesleyan Methodist Church was built at North A and 2nd in 1925. $1,000 was raised at a tent meeting across from Riley Hall. The following year, the church, costing $6,000, was dedicated out of debt. This building now serves the Calvary Baptist congregation. The new consolidated Mississinewa High School was built on West Main Street in 1950. As the student population increased, a newer and bigger high school complex was built at North 1st and H Streets in 1977. The former high school was then remodeled and made into a middle school and named after Dr. R.J. Baskett, a longtime member and president of the school board. In 1952, Glenn Bastian, a local artist, held open house at his new Spanish-style home and studio on East Main Street. This impressive stairwell is located in the west end of the house, now owned by Councilman Jim Spurgeon. South H Street crossing was the scene of a major wreck on the Pennsylvania line on April 13, 1956. Veronica thought the whole thing quite amusing, but the wrecking crew probably didn't see it that way. The Twin City State Bank was one of the first new buildings in the new city. It featured a unique architectural treatment of the period. During the Depression, bulletproof glass was installed around all teller cages. But in their infinite wisdom, the bank officers decided in 1960 to modernize the structure, destroying every visible feature of the structure. This, then, was the final result. No further comment. In the decade of the 60s, it was feared the entire central part of the business district would be wiped out by fires when 4 main businesses were destroyed. First in the series of catastrophes was Twin City Chevrolet in the spring of 1963. A month later, Cox's Supermarket across from City Hall met a similar fate. Located in the old O. Gordon Furniture Building, the store was a total loss. Cox Ford dealership, located in the former Gas City Transfer Buildings, was the third major business to fall on February 26, 1965. The entire building, along with many automobiles, was destroyed. The final blow came in July of 1966 when Rothinghouse Brothers Rexall Drug Store and the former Tom's Clothing Shop were gutted. In observance of the United States Bicentennial in 1976, the west wall of the Lowell Roach Insurance Building was the canvas for this mural, based on the painting in the post office. The second story of the building has since been removed and the mural destroyed. The original Gas City Land Company office, later remodeled into the Needham Story Funeral Home at 4th and Main, was torn down in 1981 to make way for a parking lot. The modern new funeral home was built just across the alley to the south. The old hotel building at Ward and Main may be the last original business structure still standing in the Harrisburg area. It is now used for apartments. The Avalon, formerly the Mississinawa Hotel, is now used as apartments also. The ornamental corner roofs were removed early in the century. Other hotels that once served the area were the Queen, Rankin's, the Park, and the Fisher. The Palm Cafe was located in the Avalon Hotel in 1922. According to the bill of fare posted on the wall, you could get a porterhouse steak dinner for 50 cents, any kind of sandwich for 10 cents, regular dinner for 40 cents, and the business lunch for a quarter. Viewed straight on, the hotel displays some of the intricate brickwork used in construction. A turn-of-the-century tenant of the hotel was the J.R. West Hardware Company, as shown in the sign on the side. The site of the tennis courts in the foreground was later to become Carl Bastian's garage and still later the Handy Andy. This check was drawn by J.R. West on the First National Bank of Gas City on May 17, 1901. Note the documentary stamp that was required on all checks at the time. Located on the east side of the bank building was the Ward Mortuary. Longtime proprietor of the mortuary, Clyde Ward, is shown in this 1957 photo with his wife May, who served for years as choir director of the Christian Church. Twin City Chevrolet was just a struggling newcomer in this 1925 photo. The Gas City Park, the result of countless hours of volunteer effort and civic pride, is built around what was originally a gravel pit. This scenic view of the duck pond includes a last nostalgic glimpse of the Owens, Illinois glass factory in the background. The picnic shelter offers another nice view. The park is also home to an excellent small animal zoo. The David Jones Coal Company operated on South 4th Street and the railroad from about 1900. Mr. Jones wrote this check on the First State Bank of Gas City on June 30th, 1913. The original glass lantern slide of this advertisement for Jones Coal was shown at one time between shows at the Arcade Theater. Coal used to be unloaded by hand, but in 1933, P.O. Neely & Son Coal Yard installed conveyors, saving considerable time and labor. Other dealers who helped supply the community's fuel needs were Hinchin's, Reese's, and Gallagher's. Most city streets were unpaved before 1935. This is an early view of South B Street. First Street from South H to 38th Street was one of the first, and it was made of concrete. In this snapshot from the late 30s, the WPA was in the process of transforming West North A Street from a cinder and gravel street to a one paved with asphalt. And later, the alleys received some much-needed help. O. Gordon Furniture Store was established in 1894 at the southwest corner of 2nd and Main Streets. In about 1910, Mr. Gordon purchased the first truck off the assembly line at the Indiana Truck Corporation in Marion. By 1941, Gordon's Furniture Store had expanded to an 88-foot frontage in the original business block across from City Hall. The dime store was at the right. Along with the expansion came this streamlined moving van to facilitate deliveries. Until about 1975, the Gas City Vault Company was a fixture at the corner of Broadway and Main Streets. Runyon's Grocery was located on the west end of Main Street by the Iron Bridge. And a popular spot with the kids in the 50s was the Tasty Freeze next to Russ Miller Service Station. Service Station, you remember them? Russ was located at Grant and Main. He kept our 66 Chevrolet Malibu station wagon going for 224,000 miles. Before him, the station was operated by John Fanning. A short-lived downtown fast food restaurant was the Burger Chef across from the library, shown here at the grand opening in 1974. The next few slides show places that are intriguing either architecturally or historically. Jack Courtney's house at 3rd and South A is probably the only all-steel home in town. The Morgan Building on East Main Street features a large window and a corner bay window arrangement on the second floor. The huge house on South H Street has always been interesting, mainly because of its size and its uncertain history. The F.E. Schwann home on East North A Street is one of several for consideration on a list of historical places. The twin bungalows with a common garage on West Main Street are a rarity. The former business building across from the fire station features the iron storefront style that was once very popular. It has been difficult to locate portraits of a number of our former mayors. The few of them we have follow. Jess Hans, a local businessman, served from March to September in 1913 before resigning. This is the man for whom Hunts Hall Community Building was named. Frank Lermenio served from January 1918 to January 1922. He operated a newsstand for many years. Calvin Taylor was mayor from January 1922 until January 1926. Edward J. Day served from 1926 to 1935. Dr. L. H. Conley was mayor from 1914 to 1918 and again from 1935 to 1939. Mayor Robert Ray was at the helm from 1939 to 1948 and again from 1952 to 1964 when he died in office. Melvin E. Huffman served as acting mayor the remainder of Robert Ray's term and was re-elected for one term from 1964 to 1968. And present mayor Eugene Lynn was sworn in January 1st, 1968 and continues in his 24th year. A quick backward glance at a few other personalities in the 40s. Glenn Greenlee was a master shoe repairman who served Gas City for over 20 years, having started in 1921. Dutch Goebel, the Iceman, as he appeared near the end of his career, replaced by the electric refrigerator. He also operated a small ice house on the alley behind the bowling alley at 1st and Main. Jason DeFord was not only a barber but a serious collector of Greentown caramel and holy amber glassware, amassing one of the largest collections to be found. He's shown here with customer Roscoe Johnson. 1992 saw the end of the so-called Five and Dime when Toplift's Ben Franklin store sold out and closed their doors. This night scene looks at Main and First with Eddie Chapman's Market on the left. Lighting up the 200 block is Brent's, McDonough Drug Store, Hundley Hardware, and Webb's Furniture. Neon outshines today's plastics any day or night. Speaking of McDonough, I'd like to offer this slide in memory of Bob, drugstore owner and pharmacist and friend to many people for many years. On the right is former Cox Ford car sales before the disastrous fire in 1965. And this rainy night shot includes the Arcade Theater and Spiker's Furniture on the right. To continue the mood, the Nesbitt House lends itself to the holiday treatment. As one of the final items in our scrapbook of Gas City memories, we present this portrait of the 1911 Gas City Tigers football team. The 1992 Centennial celebration in Gas City was a week-long series of events planned with something for everyone. Starting with the Shriners Parade of Lights, attractions included basketball, volleyball, and horseshoe pitching tourneys, a canoe race, and a merchant's window decorating contest. Also horse and buggy rides, balloon rides, an antique museum, historical slideshow, and fire truck rides for the kids. Other events available featured a style show, a talent show, cow pie bingo, ice cream socials, and a quilt display. The Lions Club Parade, flea markets, family picnicking, and a Medicine Man show in the park added to the entertainment. One of the events scheduled for the celebration was to dig up the time capsule buried in 1942, but after a month of speculation, no one could come up with a clue as to its whereabouts. On the morning of July 4th, as a last resort, Mayor Lynn invited residents to a dig-in on the City Hall lawn. Many showed up with shovels, probes, metal detectors, even divining rods. Utility Superintendent Joe Mitch provided tobacco for the really heavy stuff. T-shirts reading, "I dig Gas City, where's the time capsule?" were handed out to the first 200 people to arrive. Gas City's Centennial celebration was probably the best publicized event ever thanks to the time capsule hunt. It was aired on Fort Wayne and Indianapolis TV, also CNN, and points as far away as California. The story received attention on the Associated Press wire service, so radio stations all across the country picked it up also. But alas, the capsule was never found. At a special ceremony held July 10th, the new time capsule was buried in front of the War Memorial in a conspicuous place on the southwest corner of the City Hall lawn. Roy Bigger, Gas City Historical Society president, presided. As Joan Frame, Historic Society secretary, read off a list of items, Mayor Lynn placed them into the PVC capsule. Included were names of residents, newspapers, photos, school yearbooks, city and church histories, personal letters, and the mayor's pipe. The capsule was then buried, with about 1 foot of it left above ground. Finally, it was encased in concrete and a marker placed on top. Recorded for posterity, a copy of this photo of Historical Society members was added to the contents before sealing. Pictured from left to right were Joan Frame, Fred Buffington, Roy Bigger, Richard Jones, Norman Berry, and Patty Chapman kneeling. The celebration reached a climax with the old-fashioned fireworks display in the park on the night of July 4th. It had been a busy and entertaining 100th birthday party.